Okay, in this video what we're going to do is kind of show you some practical application to some basic things we can do in Illustrator. And so we're going to make this like keychain fob here. So I'm just going to go over some of the basics, but there are some specifics that will work for our specific laser printer and laser cutter. So we're going to go over that. So right now it doesn't make a whole lot of difference what size it is. I'm just going to go with the standard letter size and create it. This is in points. You could do it in inches, but this is standard 8.5 by 11. So we'll just start with that. And then what we want to do is I've created some that I kind of picked a little bit arbitrarily, but seems to work. It's about 2.5 inches long and about 1 3/8 inch high. That seems to be what my rec center pass is, so I just chose that. So we've talked about the just basic shape creation. This is the shapes. If I click and hold, then I have a variety of different shapes that I can choose. I'm going to choose a rectangle, and again we have a fill and a stroke color here, and we're just going to use black and white at the moment. So in its simplest form, I can click on the rectangle tool and just click and drag, but that really makes it a little bit more difficult for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to want this to be specific. If it was a little more freestyle, then that would be fine, but specifically I can just click one time in the gray area, and then I get a dialog box that'll tell me what size I want. Well, this is 362 points. Well, that's a little bit more difficult. So because you're probably not familiar with points, we want to do it in inches. So we can do a couple of different things. I'm going to go back here. If you want to change it globally, then probably a good idea is to go to View and turn on rulers first of all, and that'll give me rulers, but again that's in points. So if I go to Edit and Preferences and Units, I can change the general is in points. I want to go to inches. Now the stroke is fine, it's in points. We could go to inches as well if you want to know, but we're not going to do anything in strokes, so that's kind of immaterial right now. I can also, now you can see that the ruler changed. I can also, when I go to make my my box, I click one time, I have inches. Well, I could have just went in and typed in IN, and that would have changed the units for that specific object. But right now I want to go, width is 2.5 inches and the height, as you can do the math if you'd like, but 3/8 of an inch is 0.375, so I want it to be 1.375, and boom, there it is. So that's the size that I'm going to do. The laser will kind of disregard all this extra space, so it won't make all the difference. Just like in Photoshop though, I can zoom in by Control plus, and Control minus zooms out. I can hold the space bar down, and I can pan right and left with the left mouse button. So now in older Illustrator and probably Inkscape, I don't know that this was possible. I know in older Illustrator it wasn't, but in the newer Illustrator that we have in class, we have these little icons here, and what that is a fillet, and a fillet is just a rounding of a corner. So what we can do is if you want to just a smoother, and the example that I'm going to have in class is just has a 1/4 inch fillet, so I can grab this, left click and drag, and I can watch the indicator there on my screen as I go closer and to 0.25, which is a 1/4 inch. I can keep dragging to the center, and that allowed me to fillet all 3 sides. Now there are some other things here. I know this is kind of basic, but it's not basic. Is we can go to View and turn on Smart Guides. Smart Guides will kind of give us some indicators of like when we're in the center of something. It comes up with a pink line, which is kind of helpful. So what I've done here as well is I need a holder for this. or a hole so that I can put my keys in it. And probably kind of a good rule of thumb is about 1/4 inch. So I can switch tools here to the ellipse tool, and I can click one time. And now an ellipse has 2 different axes. A circle only has 1 radius. So in order to kind of make an ellipse a circle, we want the height and the width to be the same. So, and we want this to be about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to put 0.25. And I erase my inch mark. Okay, and there, put it. Now those are my cut lines. Now as I move this, I can go to my move tool, click in the middle somewhere, but not in the exact center, because that's the point of rotation. If I wanted to rotate this, it will be around that. So I want to just kind of grab inside the bounding box, but not exactly in the center. And you can see as I'm moving it that we've got some pink lines showing up. Those are the smart guides, like do we want something tangent or but in this case what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of come here and kind of mouse over until I get this pink line. That's really the center of the whole fob here. Now you can choose where to put that. I would probably put it about 1/8 inch, and you can see at the very top where up here you can kind of show a marker, and now I've messed that up. There we go. It's a kind of a faint line, but you can kind of see where that circle is based upon its center point. So as I move, my center is at 3.5, and if this is if I want 1/4 inch to the edge, then I know that the radius of this circle is 1/8 inch, so I could go a little closer. I could go to maybe 3 3/8. I think I'm just going to stick with no, I'm sorry, I'm at 3.25. That makes more sense. I'm at 3.25 with an 1/8 inch radius, so that's going to give me 1/8 inch right here. So I lined it up based upon that smart guide. I could, if I wanted to, pull a blue line down. If I grab up into the ruler and drag down, and 1/2 of 1 3/8, and you're gonna have to do some math, is, let's see, 1/2 7/16. But I think we need to probably just it'd be easier just to use the smart guide. So anyway, now that's going to be our cut line. If this has a stroke, and it presently does, and I can look over here and it has a 1-point stroke. If you don't have properties up, you can go to Window and turn on properties. That gives you some indication of what's going on. We have a white fill and we have a black stroke and 1 point. Really, that is just a path. It has no width at all. I can show you that by going to View and Outline, and so it's created a path. That's the path that the laser is going to follow. It does not have anything to do with the stroke at all. The stroke is only purely for you to be able to see where that line is a little easier. So now, what I would like you to do is figure out some sort of text that fits in this space. And so we're going to go to Type Tool, and I'm going to put in my personal keys. Or I'll just put on the keys. Now, I hit enter just to drop it down so I can make the text as big as I can. I can select it all again, and then I need to modify that text. Now, so if you have properties up, you see that there's a character palette over here. I can also go to a window, and I can go to type and turn on character. That allows me to change the font. Lost my selection. Oops. if I click in the window here, I mean, I could use the drop down. It'll give me all these different samples, but I like just clicking in the window and using my arrow keys to go and find font that I'd like. Now you can pick pretty much any of these. Obviously, I'm just going to pick something simple here, and then I lost it. And then I can change the font size here. And I'm going to make this small because I want to show you one other aspect of this. Go to the move tool and I can move it. If I want to reduce this size here, I want to select my text. And we talked about this in, we talked about this in Photoshop, which is leading. I can reduce the leading here. That's the space between lines. I can modify that. And then I can center it wherever I want. Now, one of the things is we want to save this two different ways. We want to save this as a Illustrator file just as it comes up. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to do to my desktop, and I'll just do test Fob. And when I hit save, I'm going to come up with this dialog box and it says, what version do I want to save it in? Illustrator 2020. Well, that gives me the most flexibility because that's the newest version. But what we're going to have to do, and I'm going to remind you of this, is we're going to have to change that. And let's say that I'm going to do that again. I'm going to save it that way at the moment, but I'm going to change it to version 8. That's definitely several generations back. It's legacies, but that's what the laser printer likes. So that's what we'll save in before we actually take it to the laser. But for right now, so we'll actually save two different versions so that we can modify it in 2020, but we're going to send it to the laser in Illustrator 8. Okay, and a lot of times that's, you want to be careful when you're sending something to a printer. Maybe the printer doesn't have the latest version and you want to ask them what version they have, so that they don't get errors if you're using a newer version. Now, okay, I'm going to stop right there, and I'll pick back up here with how to put clip art in. So this is still not going to print yet because this is text. This is actually an H and an O and an N. It's not paths. So what we want to do before we quit here is I'm going to change this. I got to make sure though that my spelling is correct and my placement is correct and whatever else I need with this text. But before I go to send this to the laser, I have to change this to paths instead of a letter. So in order to do that, I have to change that to vector lines. I select it, go to type, and then create outlines. Now it is simply a set of paths. I can go back to my view and outline. It is not a letter anymore. So if that O should be an A, then I've just got to redo the whole thing. Okay, but now the laser is going to be able to read that path, and it's going to fill all that in with black, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So making the next video here in a second, showing you how to take clip art and trace it and apply that to our fob. So I'm going to save it right now, and I already did save it once, so I'm going to just hit save, or I can hit Control S. That works for most programs. That's just once you've saved it the first time, give it a name. Control S is a quick way to save. So we'll be back in the next video.